There he was, my own brother-in-law, frozen in a boardroom doorway, staring at me like he'd just seen a ghost. The last time he'd seen me was at a family dinner where he'd called me a waitress in front of everyone. Now I was sitting at an investment committee table with his $500,000 loan application right in front of me. The woman he'd mocked for bussing tables was the CEO he'd been counting on to approve his funding. I didn't say a word when he walked in, just waited while he processed what my silence at that dinner actually meant. Not that I couldn't defend myself, but that I didn't have to. The vote that morning took 3 minutes. Understanding how we got there takes longer. It started 9 days earlier at my mother's anniversary party. Thank you for being here with me. Before we start, drop a quick comment. Where are you listening from, and what time is it there right now? Your words might be exactly what someone else needs today. Quick note. Some details have been adjusted for storytelling, but the lesson at the heart of this is what truly matters. I didn't correct him when my brother-in-law called my work bussing tables in front of the whole family. I just watched him smile like he'd made a joke instead of a judgment. My name is Adrian Madden. I'm 36 years old, and for the past 4 years, I've let my family believe I'm just a part-time cooking teacher struggling to make ends meet. That Saturday night, we'd gathered at my mother's house in Forest Hills for my sister's 10th anniversary dinner. Candles lined the table, wine stood open. The smell of roasted chicken filled the air. Darren Rivera, my 42-year-old brother-in-law, stood at the head of the table in his tailored suit, holding a wine glass like a trophy. He owned a small restaurant in Manhattan. My sister Denise, 39, swept into the dining room wearing the kind of smile that looked expensive, perfected over 10 years of marriage to a man who expected her to look the part. "So, Adrian," Darren said, "how's the teaching going? Still showing people how to boil water?" I sat at the edge of the table. It pays the bills. My mother Ruth, 65, arranged bread rolls at the far end, her retired teacher's hands finding small tasks to avoid looking at anything uncomfortable. My niece Wren, barely 8 years old, darted between the table and kitchen in her party dress. Darren laughed and turned to my uncle. "Every family needs someone who's good at bussing tables, right?" A few people chuckled. The kind that fills awkward space. Denise poured more wine into glasses already half full. "I mean, we can't all be empire builders," Darren continued. "Someone's got to serve the food, right?" I looked at him, just looked, held his eyes until he shifted his weight and reached for his wine glass, breaking contact first. "Darren, more wine?" Ruth asked, too bright. You know what's strange about being underestimated? It's not the insult itself. It's watching everyone around you choose to believe it. Dinner continued. I ate quietly, listened to toasts about love and partnership. Watch Darren accept congratulations like staying married for a decade was remarkable. After dessert, I gathered my coat. Wren appeared at my elbow, her small face serious. "Aunt Addie," she whispered, "does it make you sad when Daddy calls you the waitress lady?" I knelt down. Something cold settled in my chest, but I kept my voice gentle. "I'm never sad, sweetheart. I promise." "Okay," she twisted her dress hem. I just hear him say it a lot. I kissed her forehead and stood. Drove home in silence, my hands steady on the wheel, my mind moving past anger into something sharper. I didn't cry. I didn't rehearse speeches. I remembered there was an email I needed to check, a notification I'd ignored for 2 days. Because if Darren thought my life was that simple, that visible, that easy to summarize, then maybe it was time to show him exactly how wrong a person could be. The apartment was dark when I got home, which was exactly how I wanted it. No lights, no distractions, just me and whatever was waiting in that inbox. I unlocked the door to my Park Slope apartment and went straight for the laptop. The space around me told the story I'd been maintaining. Secondhand couch, mismatched dishes, walls bare except for a community college calendar. I set the laptop on the kitchen table and filled the kettle while it powered up. The notification sat at the top of my inbox, 2 days old. Subject: Loan application update. Action required. The email was from my bank. I scanned past the greeting to the details. Loan application submitted. Amount requested: $500,000. Guarantor listed: Adrian Madden. My name, my social security number, my address. I had never signed anything. Borrower name: Darren Rivera. Purpose: Maltese location restaurant expansion. Approval timeline: 30 business days pending guarantor confirmation. I read it twice. My face didn't change. My pulse didn't spike. This wasn't shock. This was confirmation. $500,000. My brother-in-law had attached my name to $500,000 without asking, without permission, without even the courtesy of a phone call. Here's what I learned in business school that they don't teach you at family dinners. The people closest to you are often the ones who'll assume your signature without asking, because proximity looks like permission. I closed the email, opened a new document. I didn't call my sister. I didn't compose an angry response. I didn't do anything that would feel satisfying in the moment, but useless long term. Instead, I typed 4 lines, numbered and precise. 1. Verify trademark filings under family names in food service sector. 2. Confirm board membership roster for Hudson River Investment Group. 3. Legal consult corporate and IP. 4. I left blank. That one would get filled in after I knew exactly how deep this went. The kettle clicked off. I made tea and pulled up my calendar. Tomorrow was Sunday. Monday morning, I could start making calls. Tuesday at the latest for legal consultation. 72 hours. That was all I needed. I saved the document with Monday's date as the file name and closed the laptop. Outside, Brooklyn settled into late-night rhythm, distant sirens, someone's music floors above, the hum that never quite goes silent. I sat in the dark and thought about everything Darren didn't know. About the empire he dismissed as waitressing. About the board seat he didn't know I held. About the fact that $500,000 wasn't even impressive to me anymore. He'd made a mistake, a big one, and I was going to make sure he understood exactly how big it was. The office on the 42nd floor had my name on the door in letters I'd chosen myself, but my family had never seen it. Sunday morning, Manhattan quiet below, that felt like the smartest decision I'd ever made. I'd come to Madden Foods headquarters at 9, the way I did most weekends. Corner office, financial district views stretching toward the harbor, a desk that cost more than most people spent on a car. The nameplate read CEO in simple brass. I was reviewing trademark monitoring alerts when the notification appeared. New filing in food service sector. Product names matching our flagship line with minor variations. Registrant name Denise Rivera. Business address Darren's Restaurant. Filing date 6 weeks ago. I opened my laptop camera and called Margot. Margot Chapman, my 40-year-old business partner and co-founder, appeared on screen with the same sharp expression she wore during every board meeting. We'd built Madden Foods together from a farmer's market booth to $12 million in revenue. "What's wrong?" she asked. "Check the trademark filing I just forwarded you." I watched her eyes move across her screen. Her jaw tightened. "Tell me this is coincidence," she said. "Tell me your sister randomly chose the exact same product architecture we spent 2 years developing." 3 months ago, Darren asked very specific questions about our spice blends, I said. I thought he was making conversation. The packaging design is nearly identical. The flavor profiles match our top sellers. She paused. "There's more. He called me last week. Tell me." He wanted to discuss a partnership, expanding into packaged foods, needed an experienced distributor, asked if I'd be interested in working with him directly. "Working around me. He described you as, and I'm quoting, 'too small scales in your thinking to understand distribution at his level.' Theft isn't always about taking something you don't have. Sometimes it's about taking something from someone you've decided doesn't deserve to keep it." At his level, I repeated. The man needs a $500,000 loan I'm apparently guaranteeing. Margot's eyes widened. You're what? Bank notification came through Friday. He listed me as guarantor without asking. He pitched you on my business model using my sister's name while simultaneously stealing my credit and my recipes. I kept my voice level. That about cover it? What do you want to do? I looked at the trademark filing still open on my screen. My sister's name, his address, my recipes. I'll call you back after Monday's legal consult. I need to understand the full scope before I decide anything. What I didn't tell her was that I'd already found item 4 for the list, the piece that would make everything else fall into place. I ended the call and opened that blank document from the night before, scrolled to the 4th line, typed 6 words. 4, confirm I'm on his board. My car was parked between a rusted Honda with student decals and a faculty Subaru with a coexist bumper sticker when my corporate attorney called to tell me I held every card in a game my brother-in-law didn't know I was playing. Monday afternoon, LaGuardia Community College parking lot. I sat in my modest sedan, still wearing the clothes I taught in, simple blouse, comfortable pants, nothing that drew attention. Through the windshield, I watched students cross toward the Culinary Arts Building, where I'd be teaching knife skills in 40 minutes. I rolled up the windows for privacy and answered the call. Claudia Hartwell, my corporate and intellectual property attorney for the past 6 years, had the kind of precise legal mind that found loopholes before they became problems. That's exactly why I kept her on retainer. I've reviewed everything you sent, she said without preamble. Let's start with the guarantee. Tell me. Straightforward. You never signed consent, so you have unilateral right to remove your name. No legal consequence. The bank will notify the borrower within 24 hours, and he'll have 15 business days to provide alternative guarantee or the application auto-denies. And the trademark filing? Textbook infringement. Your sister's name is on the paperwork, but the products mirror your flagship line exactly. Strong civil case. She paused. But here's the interesting part. You're listed as a voting member on the Hudson River Investment Group board. I know, I said. I've been on that board for 18 months. The same board reviewing his loan application. Yes, Adrienne. Her voice shifted slightly. He's applying to you. I watched a student drop her textbook, scramble to pick it up. What are my obligations? Legally, you're not required to recuse yourself unless he specifically identifies a conflict of interest. Did he list you anywhere in his application materials? As his unauthorized guarantor. That's the only place my name appears. Power isn't always about being in the biggest office or wearing the most expensive suit. Sometimes it's about banging the right seat when the vote gets called and nobody knowing you're there until it's too late to change the outcome. Then you're clear, Claudia said. What do you want to do? I want to do this completely by the book. No shortcuts, no gray areas. Withdraw the guarantee through official channels. File cease and desist on the trademark. Attend your scheduled board meetings as normal. Everything you're considering is perfectly legal. When's his pitch scheduled? Wednesday. 9 days from now. 9 days. That was all the time he had left before everything changed. One more thing, Claudia added. Once you withdraw the guarantee, he'll know something's wrong. He'll try to contact you. Let him try. I thanked her and ended the call. Sat for 30 seconds watching students cross the parking lot to afternoon classes, where I'd be teaching sauce fundamentals and basic technique, skills I'd learned 20 years ago that had built everything Darren thought I didn't have. In 9 days, he'd walk into a boardroom expecting strangers. He'd get me instead, and he'd only have himself to blame for every second of what came next. The paperwork that would collapse my brother-in-law's loan fit on 3 pages, and the bank officers who processed it never asked me why I was removing a guarantee I'd never agreed to in the first place. Wednesday morning. 6 days before the pitch meeting, I walked into the Chase branch in Forest Hills with documents Claudia had prepared the day before. The loan operations officer, a woman in her 50s with reading glasses on a chain, pulled up the file without any visible reaction to what she was reading. "I see here you're listed as guarantor," she said, "but there's no signed consent form on file." "That's correct," I said. "I never provided consent. Then this withdrawal is straightforward. I'll process it immediately." She typed something, clicked twice, typed again. The efficiency of it felt almost anticlimactic. Years of family assumption erased in 30 seconds of keystrokes. "The application is now flagged as incomplete," she continued. "The borrower will receive notification tomorrow morning. They'll have 15 business days to provide an alternative guarantor meeting our requirements, or the application automatically denies. And if they don't meet the deadline, automatic denial. No appeals, no extensions." She stamped my copies with the official bank seal. "Is there anything else I can help you with today?" "No, thank you." There's a specific kind of power in signing your name to a document that erases you from someone else's plan. Not loud, not dramatic, just permanent. Before I tell you what happened when that phone started ringing, if you're still with me, comment A or B. A if you think what I did was justified. B if I should have talked to my family first. Just one letter and maybe why in 5 words. Quick note: the next part includes some fictionalized details for storytelling purposes, but the lesson about boundaries is real. I walked out into the February morning. Cold air, gray sky, the kind of day that feels like it's waiting for something to happen. My phone vibrated in my coat pocket before I'd crossed the parking lot. Denise. I pulled out the phone, glanced at the screen, didn't answer, kept walking toward my car. The phone stopped, then started again. Denise. Again, I silenced it and dropped it back in my bag. A text notification buzzed. I didn't read it. Crossed the street, unlocked my car, slid into the driver's seat. The phone vibrated twice more before I'd even started the engine. I sat there watching it light up, Denise's name flashing across the screen like a warning I'd already decided to ignore. She didn't know yet why the bank had called them. She didn't know I'd been the one to pull the thread that would unravel everything. But she was about to find out. I wasn't supposed to hear it. I'd only stopped by to pick up the box of winter clothes I'd stored in my mother's basement 2 years ago, but Darren's voice carried through the half-open living room door like he wanted an audience. Thursday evening, 2 days after I'd withdrawn the guarantee, 5 days before the pitch meeting, I'd used my key to let myself in. The house was quiet, lights dim. Ruth was at her church group, the one that met every Thursday at 7. I headed down the hallway toward the basement door when I heard him. The living room door stood ajar, yellow light spilling into the hall. I froze. "The guarantee fell through," Darren was saying. "Video call?" From the sound of it. "Speaker mode. Some paperwork issue. But Wednesday's pitch will solve everything." I stayed motionless in the shadow. "I've researched the board," he continued. "Every member. None of them know me. None of them have any connection to my business or my family." I could picture him pacing, gesturing with his free hand the way he always did when he thought he was being impressive. "The concept is bulletproof," he said. "Restaurant anchor with packaged goods distribution. Vertical integration from kitchen to retail shelf. It's the future of the industry. My concept. My exact business model, word for word. My wife's sister does some small-scale cooking classes," he added, and I heard the dismissal in his voice like a blade. "She doesn't understand real business operations at this level." There's something uniquely clarifying about hearing yourself described by someone who thinks you're not listening. Every dismissal, every underestimation, every casual cruelty becomes evidence you didn't even have to collect. I stood in that dark hallway, my hand still on my keys, listening to him describe the board as if he'd done his homework, as if he'd covered every angle, as if Wednesday would be just another successful pitch to strangers who'd see his vision and hand him exactly what he wanted. Small footsteps on the stairs behind me. I turned. Wren stood 3 steps up, her small face serious in the dim light. "Aunt Addie," she whispered, "are you okay? Why are you in the dark?" I knelt down to her level. The cold fury that had been building in my chest shifted into something softer, something protective. "I'm always okay," I whispered back. "I promise. Always." She came down the last steps and wrapped her arms around my neck. Over her shoulder, I could still hear Darren's voice, confident and oblivious, describing profit margins and market penetration. "Daddy's talking loud," Wren said against my shoulder. "He does that when he's excited about restaurant stuff." "I know, sweetheart." I held her for 10 seconds longer than necessary, memorizing the feeling of something innocent in a house where nothing else was. Then I stood, took her hand, and walked past that living room door without looking in. Darren never knew I'd been there. He never knew what I'd heard. And in 5 days, when he walked into that boardroom expecting strangers, I wouldn't tell him. I was already in my seat when he arrived, third chair from the head of the table, portfolio open, pen ready, wearing the navy suit I saved for deals worth more than what most people earned in a decade. The boardroom had floor-to-ceiling windows that framed Midtown like a trophy case. Philip Townsend, the investment committee's senior facilitator, ran these sessions with the efficient neutrality of someone who'd seen 1,000 pitches and remembered none of them personally. He was 58, balding in a way that suggested competence rather than vanity, and his job was to keep the meeting moving regardless of what happened in it. Margot sat across from me, 2 folders stacked in front of her, her expression unreadable. The door opened at 9 exactly. Darren walked in carrying a briefcase I recognized from Christmas 3 years ago. My sister gave it to him, leather with brass corners. He was talking to someone behind him, mid-sentence about traffic on the FDR, and he didn't look at until he was halfway to the presentation in podium. Then he stopped. His face did something I'd never seen before, a kind of freeze that started in his eyes and spread to his jaw. Recognition wasn't instant. It moved in stages: confusion, then dismissal, then a second look that confirmed what his brain refused to process. I didn't move, didn't smile, just watched him realize. Being seen is different from being recognized. One is physical, the other is contextual. Darren had seen me 100 times, at dinners, in my mother's kitchen, serving coffee while he talked about market positioning like I wasn't in the room. But recognition requires fitting someone into a framework that makes sense, and there was no version of the world where I belonged on this side of the table. He opened his mouth, closed it, looked at Philip like there'd been a mistake. Philip checked his tablet. Next presentation is Darren Rivera, restaurant expansion with packaged food integration. Loan request, 500,000. He gestured to the chair at the presentation end. We'll start with board introductions. Darren moved to the chair like his autopilot was still functioning while his brain caught up. He set the briefcase down carefully, too carefully. Philip started on the left, Michael Chen, private equity. Then around the table, Sarah Okonkwo, retail distribution, James Whitmore, commercial lending. Margot was next. She didn't look at Darren when she spoke. Margot Chapman, strategic partnerships, Madden Foods. Philip continued. Adrian Madden, founder and CEO of Madden Foods, 12 million in annual distribution revenue. Primary supplier relationships with the accounts you've listed in your application materials. Darren's hand went flat on the table. Not a gesture, just stabilization. Margot leaned toward me, voice low enough that only I heard. Ready? I've been ready. Philip finished the introductions and nodded at Darren. The floor is yours. Darren stood, adjusted his tie, opened the briefcase and took out his presentation folder with movements that were too precise, like someone trying to prove they weren't rattled. Thank you. His voice almost held. I'll I'll begin with the market opportunity, but his hands, resting on either side of the folder, gave him away. 20 minutes can feel like an eternity when you're watching someone sell your own ideas back to you. But the question and answer session, that's where the performance ends and the truth starts bleeding through. Philip opened the floor. Questions for Mr. Rivera. Sarah Okonkwo asked about market penetration strategy. Darren walked through 3 phases with practiced ease, pointing to slides with projected growth curves. James Whitmore asked about competitive positioning. Darren had answers for everything, his confidence returning now that he was on familiar ground. Margot's leaned forward. Your scaling projections assume rapid distribution expansion. What partnerships support that? We're in discussions with regional distributors who handle exactly this product category, Darren said. Established networks, proven track record in specialty foods. The infrastructure already exists. He was describing my distribution model, my clients. 12 years of relationship building, presented like market research he'd stumbled across in a trade report. I kept my pen still, face neutral, let him talk. Michael Chin asked about profit margins. Darren answered smoothly, rattling off numbers that sounded reasonable because they were based on my actual client data. Philip checked his notes. Other questions? The room went quiet. I looked up from my notepad. Where did you develop this concept? Not accusatory, just curious, professional. Every head turned. Darren met my eyes. Half a second of silence that felt longer. Market observation, he said carefully. Industry research, standard due diligence. I nodded once, wrote a single word on my notepad, didn't elaborate. Thank you. That was all. Revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just a single word on a notepad, a professional nod, and the quiet sound of a door closing behind you while the person who underestimated you sits frozen in the wreckage of their assumptions. Philip glanced around the table. Other questions? Silence. Then we'll vote. All in favor of approving the $500,000 loan application? 3 hands rose. Michael, Sarah, James. It was a solid pitch on paper, professionally executed. Opposed, I raised mine. Abstentions? 1 hand. Philip noted each vote. Motion requires 4 affirmative votes for approval per committee rules. Result: 3 yes, 1 abstention, 1 no. Motion fails. Application denied. Darren's face didn't change, but his knuckles went white on the folder. I stood, collected my portfolio. Thank you, Philip. Gentlemen, I walked to the door without looking back. The hallway was empty and quiet after the boardroom. I was 10 feet from the elevator when my phone started vibrating. Pulled it from my bag. 23 missed calls. Darren. Denise. Unknown numbers. Ruth. Darren again. Denise again. The elevator arrived empty. I stepped in, pressed the lobby button, leaned against the back wall, and watched those notifications stack up as the doors slid shut. Each one proof that somewhere above me, the consequences were finally landing where they belonged. The parking garage was concrete and fluorescent lights, and the muffled echo of someone else's car alarm 3 levels down. And that's where I finally looked at everything they'd been trying to say while I was walking out of that building. 23 missed calls, chronologically displayed. Darren, Denise, Ruth, unknown numbers that were probably Darren calling from somewhere else. The pattern repeated all the way down the screen. I opened the voicemail tab. 7 messages waiting, durations ranging from 17 seconds to 3 minutes. Didn't play a single one. Selected all, deleted, confirmed. The text messages were harder to ignore because they were right there, no play button required. Ruth, call me immediately. Darren, we need to talk. But most were from Denise. 8 texts escalating from confusion to panic to anger. The last one, please call me. I don't understand what happened. Darren came home devastated. What did you do? Call me now. I read it twice, then typed slowly, deliberately. Did you know what he called me at that dinner? And what did you do? Sent. Delivered appeared beneath my message. 5 seconds later, read. 3 dots appeared. Denise typing. I powered the phone off before her response arrived. That's all the answer you're getting, I said to the empty car. Silence isn't always absence. Sometimes it's the loudest answer you can give, the kind that forces people to sit alone with their choices and realize nobody's coming to rescue them from the consequences. I started the car and drove. Not toward Park Slope, not toward the financial district, just drove. 40 minutes later, I was on Steinway Street in Astoria, parked across from a place I hadn't thought about in years, the Olympia Diner, same blue awning, same neon sign. 22 years old, culinary school tuition due, I'd worked breakfast and lunch shifts here for 8 months, learned food cost margins refilling coffee, memorized supplier negotiations watching the owner argue with delivery drivers, studied customer psychology at that Formica counter. Everything that built my company started in that diner. The irony was almost perfect. Darren called me a waitress as an insult, never knowing I'd actually been one, and that those 8 months taught me the industry knowledge that built a $12 million distribution network and gave me the power to sit on the board that denied his loan. He'd meant to humiliate me with a lie. The truth was better. I sat there for 5 minutes watching people go in and out before I started the car and drove home. The phone stayed off. It would stay off for 3 weeks. Not because I was hiding, but because I was done explaining, done justifying, done being available for emergencies that only existed because someone refused to plan. Let them figure it out themselves. 3 weeks is exactly how long it takes for silence to stop feeling like a choice and start feeling like peace. Which is why, when my phone finally rang on a Tuesday morning while I was testing a new cardamom blend, I almost didn't answer. The windows were open to early spring air, coffee brewing, notebook full of precise measurements, half teaspoon increments, temperature notes, ratios for a new product line. The phone rang again, Ruth's name on the screen. I stared at it through the third ring before I picked up. Hello, what are you doing right now? Ruth's voice was careful. Testing cardamom ratios. Silence on the other end, not awkward, just present. That dinner, she said finally. I should have said something. She didn't elaborate which dinner or what thing. I didn't make her. Another silence. Ren asked me this week, Ruth continued. She said, Grandma, where does Aunt Addie really work? I smiled for the first time since this whole thing started. What did you tell her? I didn't know what to say. Tell her the truth, I said. Or don't. That's not my problem to solve anymore. The line went quiet again, but I could hear Ruth breathing, considering something. Are you? She started, then stopped. Are we going to be okay? I don't know, I said, and meant it. But I'm okay either way. We talked for a few minutes about nothing important. Whether that bakery, if I was still running Saturdays. Small things testing whether normal conversation was still possible. When we hung up, I went back to the spices. Success isn't actually revenge, no matter how satisfying people pretend it is. It's just what happens when you keep building while everyone else is busy, assuming you've already quit. The email notification appeared at 10:15. Corporate address I didn't recognize. I opened it while waiting for the coffee to cool. Dear Madden Foods Business Development Team, it began. Formal proposal. Partnership inquiry for distribution of packaged goods. Restaurant concept seeking established distribution network with proven retail track record. I scrolled to the signature line. Darren Rivera, founder, Rivera Restaurant Group. He was pitching to my company without knowing it was mine. I read it twice. Professional language, reasonable terms, solid concept. Probably the same pitch he'd planned with my loan backing him, now sent to me as supplier instead of investor. The irony was so perfect it didn't even need acknowledgement. I clicked forward, typed the procurement team's address, subject line, standard evaluation process. No special notes. No commentary, just routing it to the same queue as every other inquiry, evaluated on merit alone, sent, closed the laptop. I measured out another half teaspoon of cardamom and wrote the ratio in my notebook with the same precision I'd used for everything else. The phone stayed silent. The email went to standard review. And somewhere across the city, people who'd underestimated me were learning what I'd known all along. Being underestimated isn't a weakness. It's the most useful advantage you can have, right up until you decide to stop letting them. And to you listening to my story, remember this: being underestimated isn't the end. It's the beginning of something they'll never see coming. Looking back, I could have confronted him at that dinner. I could have corrected him in front of everyone, proved him wrong immediately. But that would have been about ego, not real change. Silence can be more powerful than any comeback when you're building something they can't tear down with words. Don't make my mistake of caring too much about being seen before you're ready. This revenge story taught me something unexpected. True revenge isn't making someone pay, it's building yourself so high their opinions stop mattering. Stories like Grandma Revenge show satisfaction doesn't come from the reveal moment, but from building something real while they underestimated you. I believe God allows us to be underestimated because it teaches substance over recognition. His timing brought that boardroom moment when I needed to understand my worth wasn't tied to their approval. That's what every revenge story should be about: finding peace. What do you think? Was I right to stay silent, or should I have spoken up? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If this resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want more stories like this grandma revenge tale, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Your support matters. Thank you for staying until the very end. It means more than you know that you took this journey with me. As a final note, some details in this story have been fictionalized for storytelling purposes, but the lessons and emotions are real. Take care of yourself.